So, Oliver, I'm so glad that you could come along and join me today. Obviously, Jamie's away, and honestly, his performance recently has not been like that great. It's not been really top drawer. He's been, I mean, you've listened to the cast, you've heard him. He's not been as good recently. What do you think? His performance recently?
Definitely.
Yeah. So
no, I think it's been flagging.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been thinking about basically replacing him, and so I thought I'd give you a tryout this week while Jamie's away on holiday. Obviously.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Hello?
Is there someone at the door?
Just give me a sound.
Okay.
Iain, I'm here. What's going on? Why is the door locked? Are you recording? You open this door right now. You open this door right now, or so help me, I will write a strongly worded letter to you.
Fine. Look, it's not what it looks like, okay?
Hello.
Hi, Ollie.
Oh, hi, Jamie. What are you doing here? I was told you weren't going to be here.
It's not what it looks like.
What? Well,
we were just going to do a small podcast, not the main podcast.
That's not what he told me.
Things.
You said it was going to be a big podcast.
Things happened and there was stuff, and that's why I'm. Well, this is very nice, Iain. Thanks. Coming back and finding my host doing a podcast with someone else. Yeah, I'll be fine.
Look, why do we all podcast together?
I'm gonna take a minute.
I'm a menage a trois, one might say.
One might say if this was not a family show, Iain.
Let's do this just three of us then, shall we? Keep it English.
Sure.
Just sit down, Jamie. We'll do it. We'll just run through it. I'm Ian McAllister.
I'm Jamie Adams.
And I'm Oliver Kinner. This is Brainwaves episode 74, bringing you the best in board game and tabletop gaming news. These are the headlines for the week of 31st of May 2021. Coiledspring tie themselves in knots. Spiele des Jahres nominations announced. Convention season looks good-ish. All this and more on this episode of Brainwaves.
And it falls to me once more to tackle the hard stuff on the cast. So, on the 22nd of May, Coiledspring Games, a UK board games distribution company, announced a competition to win some games in collaboration with a site called Mumsnet. Mumsnet is an online forum that was originally set up as a place that people could go to for advice on parenting, relationships, all sorts of topics. Over the last few years, though, it has also become a hotspot for transphobia, with many posts on the site debating the status of trans people, fear-mongering about trans people, and generally being awful when it comes to the debates around gender and sex. The backlash to the collaboration was swift and predictable, and a few days went by before Coiledspring put out a statement. On May 26, they put out the following statement on Twitter that I would like to read for you. Whilst our competition with Mumsnet has proven popular with thousands of entries, we want to acknowledge the concerns which have been brought to our attention. We have raised these directly with Mumsnet. We are not a campaigning group, and we are committed to not discriminating against any individuals or groups. Whilst we cannot speak for Mumsnet, they provided us with the following, and concerns can be raised directly with them on contactus@mumsnet.com. There's also a link to a statement from Mumsnet that we're also going to read. Mumsnet will always stand in solidarity with vulnerable or oppressed minorities, and we strongly believe in the rights of trans people to live dignified lives free of any and all harassment. We've hosted an LGBT parents forum on Mumsnet for 15 years, and welcome trans voices onto our site. Hate speech of any kind, including transphobia, is squarely against our forum guidelines, and our moderators are highly responsive when it comes to any reports of it. Over 95% of reports are responded to in under an hour. A significant proportion of our users feel strongly about what they see as a gradual erosion of women's hard-won rights, in particular with regard to women-only spaces. Over the last 3 years, over 6,000 women have been supported out of domestic violence situations on our platform, so it's not surprising that this is a particularly resonant issue for some of our members, and being one of the internet's few female-dominated forums, with over 8 million users, we will always stand up for the right of vulnerable women's voices to be heard, because frankly, someone has to. The third paragraph there is indicative of the sort of transphobic messaging you will see throughout Mumsnet. We've reached out to Coiledspring for further comment, because as it stands, it looks like they are endorsing this viewpoint. As of the time of recording, on the 28th of May, we have not heard back from Coiledspring. One of the Edinburgh-based board game shops, Black Lion Games, has temporarily cut ties with the distributor. We also know that Meeple Park in Newcastle and Big Dog Books in Perth and Dundee have also cut ties. Scorpion Mask, one of the companies featured in the promotion, have also requested that their games be removed. There's been a lot of chat about this on the Giant Brain Discord and on Twitter as well, of course. And yeah, it's a pretty horrible situation. Coiledspring seem to not be wanting to come back off their stance of supporting Mumsnet, or at least this collaboration with Mumsnet. Whether they will do so in the future, who knows? Maybe there'll be a statement after everything's finished. We don't know if there's any kind of legal tie-up behind the scenes there. As reviewers, I have some games that Coiledspring gave me from a company called Helvetic. Remember that Coiledspring are a distributor, they're not a publisher themselves. And I have reached out to Helvetic about this competition to ask what their stance is as well. I haven't heard back from Helvetic at this time. And I know other reviewers, including yourself, Oliver, have sort of talked about what do we do now that we have these games? Yeah. Do we still support the publishers and the designers that are behind those games? Is there an implicit support of Coiledspring if we do? It's quite a tricky situation.
Absolutely. And I think another games shop or games cafe was saying that they're reaching out directly to publishers to try and get hold of the games that way rather than going via distributor. Yeah, so obviously, as a reviewer, I mean, I have reviewed Coiledspring games or Coiledspring distributor games in the past. But going forward, I will reach out to publishers directly and try and bypass Coiledspring in that way. Obviously, it's difficult because you don't know if you reach out to the publisher, will they still send you the game via Coiledspring? Because that's obviously closest to where I am potentially. If I reach out to a French publisher, for example. So yeah, it's something we just have to keep an eye out. And I've myself reached out to Coiledspring as well via email. And after the first email back was, we're making a statement, which is what you just read out. So I then followed up with another email saying, well, can you just clarify, does Coiledspring agree with Mumsnet's statement, or what is it here? Because the whole point of please ask questions to Mumsnet directly is like Coiledspring wants to wash their hands of it, but don't quite. And the second response I got from them was basically just that statement again, but in other words. So they're clearly not moving any forward from that position, which is a shame.
Yeah. Very, very disappointing. There's more bound to come out about this story. As we said, we're starting to see some small shops cutting ties with Coiledspring. I would imagine that is going to be the tip of the iceberg, and we'll update you as we hear more.
Now, I'm going to say a wee thing here. Now, of course, I was not meant to be here, and the day we published the last podcast, some big awards news showed up. Always happens, just happens on the Monday. And I thought, great, that'll be great for next podcast. And then I had to go away, but then I'm not. But we have Oliver here. Oliver, which I believe we haven't pointed out, Oliver from Tabletop Games Blog and Tabletop Inquisition podcast.
Hello. And I happen to speak German as well, because I come from Germany originally. So
what a coincidence.
What a coincidence. So I jumped onto this story, obviously, because this is sort of closer to home in that sense, even though home is the UK now, but you know what I mean. So this is Spiele des Jahres, which is a huge award happening every year. Well, actually, it's a number of awards happening in Germany, and obviously very prestigious. I mean, it means lots of sales if you can put the Spiele des Jahres award sticker on your box and things like that. So, as I say, just to remind everyone, there's 3 awards. Spiel des Jahres, which is the game of the year. Kennerspiel des Jahres, which roughly translates as the enthusiast game of the year, or gamer game of the year, I think has been named as well, even though I hate the word gamer in that sense, but enthusiast game of the year makes more sense.
Yeah.
Kinderspiel des Jahres, which is the children's game of the year. And even though we don't have any golden envelopes, which probably wouldn't be very good on the radio anyway, on the podcast, maybe...
You've already listened to this podcast,
I was going to say. Can we have some envelope effects, please, to go with this? So the nominations for Spiel des Jahres are, drumroll please, Robin Hood by Michael Menzel from Cosmos, Mikromarko Crime City by Johannes Sich from Edition Spielwiese, Zombie Teen Evolution by Annick Lobé. I don't know, Le Scorpion Mask is is it a French company, I presume?
I think so.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I've got a feeling it might be French-Canadian.
There we go. So I don't know whether I've pronounced the names correctly. Apologies if I haven't. We're then moving on to the nominations for Kennerspiel des Jahres. And here we've got Fantasy Realms by Bruce Glasgow from WizKids. Lost Ruins of Arnak, Min and Envin, Czech Games Edition. Paleo, or Paleo, by Peter Rustmeier, Handsome Glück. And then finally, Kinderspiel des Jahres, Dragomino by Bruno Cathala, Murray Ford, Wilfred Ford, and that's by Blue Orange Games. We've got Mia London and the Chase of the 625 Scoundrels by Antoine Bowser, Corentin Lebrat. I'm probably terrible at pronouncing those. Again by Le Scorpion Mask. And then finally, Storytellers by, again, Murray Ford and Wilfred Ford, published by Lifestyle Board Games. So the winners of the Spiele and Kennerspiel will be announced on the 19th of July, and the Children's Award will be on the 14th of June. Now, there's quite a few names I recognize, maybe not so much in the Kinderspiel. Do you guys recognize any predictions that you have? What do you think will do well this year?
I think it's probably going to be, for the Spiel, I'd say Robin Hood or Micro Macro. For Kennerspiel, I would be tempted to say Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd guess that as well. That's been getting a lot of buzz. And I played it. It's pretty good.
It was all right. And Kinderspiel, I'm gonna close my eyes and point to Dragomino.
Good one.
Iain?
But
I mean, I'm intrigued by a game called Mia London in the case of the 625 Scoundrels.
Yes, that
great
sounds
name.
amazing.
That's a solid name.
I've got my eye on Mikko Malko because that was sort of launched with lots of mystery and things. So apparently, lots of reviewers just got like a postcard with a part of the puzzle.
Yeah,
and then over weeks and
we
weeks,
got those.
got more and more. And I don't know. There's lots been talking about, and at least in the German sort of Twitter sphere, a lot of people like it, and there's going to be more released in that series as well. And I even heard an interview with the I guess it's the designer talking about how to actually make that game, the print processes behind it and the sort of how do you actually store the artwork, because obviously it's a large image and you can really zoom into it and all that. And the ideas of originally wanted to do it digitally, but it didn't quite work. And yeah, very clever. So Mikko Malko has probably got my favorite there.
Yeah, I saw the no pun included review of Micro Macro and went, oh, it's really interesting. And they went, well, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I think they liked it. Yeah.
Anyway, the Spiele des Jahres always happens at Essen, and there's big conventions sort of coming and going.
I don't know about going, but yep, it's my turn for convention season. So UK Games Expo, we've talked before about it may go ahead, it might not. When do tickets go on sale? We don't know. Well, tickets have gone on sale now. Now, this move comes with a lot of new information about how the con is going to go ahead and make a safe convention space, which includes a requirement for attendees to have a negative lateral flow test the day before attending the con. And alongside this, there'll be reduced capacity, as well as reduced space anyway, with things that are going on, like the hotel, the Hilton next door, being closed for renovations. There's also going to be increased cleaning measures, because when you have people touching the same thing in a very short space of time, you want enhanced cleaning measures. I'll be honest, I don't think I'm going to go to UK Games Expo this year.
No, definitely not.
Oliver?
I am very tempted, I must say, but it is so hard to tell at the moment. Things keep changing, so unless it's going to be absolutely safe, but even then it's going to be difficult, so don't know.
That's completely reasonable, but yeah, watch this space. You may see Oliver at the convention if you go. If you do, have a great time. News from further afield of Gencon, the second biggest board game convention, with news that Asmodee and Ultra Pro have pulled out from exhibiting physically at Gencon 2021, although they have said they will still be present at the virtual version that is running alongside. Now, with Asmodee pulling out, it means companies such as Z-Man Games and Fantasy Flight Games are not going to be there, and usually Z-Man and Fantasy Flight have booths that are, well, you can see them halfway across the convention floor. And that also means that not only Fantasy Flight Games, but what used to be parts of Fantasy Flight Games, which are now Ed Studios, the RPG wing, and Atomic Mass Games, the miniatures wing, will also now not be in attendance. Other companies that are pulled out physically are Paizo, Yellow, Peterson Games, and Lucky Duck Games. I've mentioned a couple of games companies here. I'm a couple that Asmodee own, but there's a lot more.
Yeah.
What do we think is going to happen to Gencon? Do we think Gencon's still going ahead? I mean, it's entirely possible that they've sunk a lot of money into it, or such a certain amount of money into it, that it can't not go ahead, if you're following my logic.
I think a lot of these convention companies are now in a really difficult position. I imagine this is the same position that Expo is in, which is that they are basically contracted to put on a show at the NEC, or in Gencon's case, in Indianapolis. And we can't really get out of that. I mean, they kind of got out of it last year because of the situation.
The difficulty is also with Expo exhibitors saying, well, look, if you really want me to book there, I have to sort of really plan a lot more ahead. It's all relatively short term, so a lot of people won't be able to attend or exhibit for that reason. Smaller exhibitors maybe find it easier and find it more flexible, but I don't know how many big names actually are going to be there. I haven't seen the exhibitor list yet, but that's going to be the next concern for Expo as well. Who's actually going to be there, and is it going to be international? I mean, that's the thing with Expo, was an international event, and it's lovely if it isn't. It's nice and local, and you see the local people. But that was all the point of Expo, to attract the international exhibitors as well as visitors, and then I can't see that happen this year.
Yeah, not to mention the dreaded B word on top of all those problems.
Yes,
as well.
Indeed. Yeah.
Let's flip this a little bit on its head, just a little bit. So if a lot of the big names pull out, but let's say it leaves behind companies that are maybe predominantly British based, is it possible that if a lot of, say, smaller indie developers and indie publishers come to, let's say, UK Games Expo, is it might be a really good year for smaller independent publishers?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe
I can see that, and it's sort of the attraction. That's why another reason why I'm thinking about going, because there will be people like Robin Kay from RuneSky Games. I think he said he's got a booth there. UK Playtest UK will probably sort of have a bigger presence because of more people potentially available to do playtesting rather going around exhibitors. I don't know. So yeah, I can see the traction for that. So maybe there will be a shift if it does actually finally go ahead. We don't know what happens until then. With variants coming out, and we don't know. It still feels like a relatively long way away in that sense. But yeah, it's a potential there that it actually creates this focus on the smaller, the indie publishers, and they're going to have a really good year. And good on them. I think that would be a good thing.
That would be nice to see. Anyway, let's go on with the news. We've got some rather difficult news at the top of this segment as well. The Plastic Soldier Company has cancelled its Prison Architect Cardboard County Penitentiary Kickstarter. This was a board game based on the computer game Prison Architect. The game had attracted a lot of controversy due to the theme of exploiting the prison population for profit. Designers of Prison Architect David Tursey and Norley Lubbers have both stepped away from the project. In a post on popular site Board Game Geek, Tursey went into more details why they were stepping away. I'm not going to read from the whole statement because it's pretty long, but to summarise it in a too long didn't read sort of way, as David does at the top of his statement: we were well-intentioned, we were making excuses, we were wrong, so please, before you leap to judgment of us, keep reading. We do recommend having a read of that. It is a fascinating read, and they make some very, very good points about sort of getting caught up in the design of it and making excuses for some of the issues that were present throughout the whole design of the game. But yeah, do you think that board games can tackle this kind of theme, guys? The sort of difficult themes? Is it possible for board games to actually tackle this kind of thing, like some computer games have tried to?
I think definitely. I think that's the part of what I'm trying to do on the blog at some point with this idea of, the serious games. I think they can do it. It's obviously going to be difficult, but if done respectively and sensitively as well, I think you can have games that at least bring your attention to a rather serious and important topic and make you think about it, maybe even are able to educate you about it. And I think board games, because they're interactive, you're making decisions during the game and you usually see the effects either immediately or maybe throughout the game. There is a mechanism there to actually actively involve you in the thinking behind it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think Prison Architect didn't do that. It's tried to do it in the rule book that I saw. I've received a preview copy. I've downloaded the rule book, and props first of all on David for that statement as well. That great that there was a public statement that went through it, whether we agree with it or not, but at least someone said something. But the rulebook was trying to be, trying to show that there are issues with prisons, and there was editor's notes throughout the rulebook, sort of linking your actions within the game to what happens actually in the real world. So if you read the rulebook, you think, okay, yeah, when I do this, this is what actually would happen in the real world. So do I want to do this in the game or not? But unfortunately, the game itself, when you play it, it doesn't come through at all, and that's, I think, the right decision to pull it in my view. And but yeah, generally, as I say, it is possible, and I have seen games that I think do it well.
I know the one you keep bringing up with good reason is the cost.
Yes,
that's what it's called.
Yeah,
which is about asbestos clearing.
So this is about asbestos mining and milling, and basically selling. And again, the rule book is important that you read that because, again, it has lots of history about asbestos, that it actually was still legal and sort of encouraged in, well-off countries until very, very recently. You'll be surprised that, I think it was Canada that still allowed it until like the 2010s or something. I mean, I'm quoting you off the top of my head, so do double check that. But you read that and think, wow, I never realized that that's how recent it is still, was available. But at least in the cost when you play the game itself doesn't sort of penalize you for, not protecting your workers against asbestos. But all the graphic design, the illustrations do remind you of what this game is about, that people lost their lives because they inhaled the asbestos fibers in their work and then got cancer and obviously over time, died of that. And the huge, legal cases afterwards, and eventually there was a link was established officially, and all that. You probably know about that, and I think it does it pretty well. And it's a game that you probably, if you do ever want to play it at all, you probably only want to play it once. It's that sort of thing.
As a little side note, the ban in Canada on import, manufacture, sell, trade, or use products with asbestos came into effect December 30th, 2018.
Yeah, so
wow,
very, very recent.
Heavy stuff. Who needs a drink?
Ooh, Iain. I'm all right, thanks. But
I've got a cup of tea here. Cup of tea?
Oh, I could go for a cup of tea. You know that. I'll get one after we finished.
Okay.
I was thinking something stronger myself, but yeah.
Coffee? Oh, you want Assam tea? Rich, multi-flavor. Very nice.
Gonna say, yeah.
Board game designer Bruno Faidutti, regarded and responsible for the classic Citadels and Mission Red Planet and one of my favourite games, Raptor, took to Twitter recently to say he didn't trust people who didn't drink alcohol. Now, this is the tweet that has since been deleted, but I'll quote it verbatim just now. Business advice. Never deal with people who don't drink. They always have something to hide. It was replaced with the following tweet. Okay, tweet deleted. I should not have written always. There can be medical reasons. But still, I'm wary of people who want to stay in control, and that's most often the point in refusing to drink. It's funny how discussion go differently on Twitter and Facebook. That tweet has also been taken down. It has been replaced with a blog post about alcohol and games. Now, we only have the translated version of this, but Bruno defends his actions by saying his words were twisted out of context, going on about the freedom of expression and the tax levied on alcohol and cigarettes.
I mean, look, I like to have a drink when I'm playing games, and you'll see from those who follow me on Instagram, I've gone cocktail making during lockdown. However, many people have bad experiences with alcohol, family history of alcohol abuse, medical reasons, health reasons, religious reasons, or just, and I'm sure Bruno would like this one, the freedom to express themselves by not drinking. This does not make a single one of them have something to hide because they won't have a drink with you.
Absolutely.
This is just an old white man in gaming gatekeeping again.
Yep.
Can you just stop it? just makes me annoyed.
This is. I'm glad this is being brought up because in the past might have gone, oh, he said that, never mind. Now at least people are going, hold on a sec, mate. 2 Stakes, please explain your actions.
Yeah.
Personally, I have a bit of I find it very interesting, the phrase. It's funny how discussion go differently on Twitter and Facebook. And is that where Facebook is potentially easier to curate? Potentially.
I mean, I guess it's like your statements on a private page or even a public page are a little less public than they are on Twitter feeds, I guess. So, yeah, you can create your audience differently.
That is me wool gathering. I'm not trying to impugn anybody. I'm simply pulling ideas out of the air. And Oliver, do you have?
No, I was going to say I don't think we're saying nobody should drink ever. That's up to them. Obviously, you can choose whatever you want to do. But the point of if you don't drink, you're obviously not letting your guard down. So I don't trust you. That is absolute nonsense. I'm happy to let my guard down quite happily without any drink whatsoever, and let my hair down at the same time. Not that there's much left, but it's it's just one of those, as I say, stereotypical statements of we have to have a drink because that's what you do in business, and that's maybe what you do as a man as well. I don't know. I don't want to put words in Bruno's mouth, but it's sad.
That's pretty much how it comes across, unfortunately.
Yeah. It has rather brought up also a wider concept of people, especially at conventions, from personal experience. After a day on the convention, we have gone to a bar and had a drink.
Yeah.
And it's where most things have culminated. Now, I understand, obviously people don't drink there, of course. But it's the estimation that it's always going to go, right, we've done that, who wants to go get a drink?
Yeah.
And that's something I haven't thought about, and I'm aware I haven't thought about it. And I think and I hope that this is going to make some changes. And we're going to see some changes happen. Convention season is around the corner. Let's see what happens.
Anyway, Oliver, the hobby's had a good 2020.
Yeah, apparently it has, which is good news. So we all know that our hobby had a good lockdown, apparently, with sales continuing to grow over 2020 because people were at home, suddenly realized they had lots of time on their hands, what to do other than watching telly and maybe playing computer games, like some people have done. But board games obviously made a huge increase as well. So according to a new report from market research provider Euromonitor International, the games and puzzles market, and I love that puzzles are always included, that it is also a form of entertainment in that sense. Solo game, I suppose, maybe, I don't know. It exceeded $12.4 billion this year. This is up from $11.7 billion last year. The UK portion of that is $436 million. So these are big numbers. And you wonder who are the players within this. So Hasbro apparently leads the pack in terms of company size, with German company Ravensburger following them. So it's worth pointing out that the financial report itself is available to buy for £875. So we've not actually read, obviously, the full report. But, if you submit something to our Patreon, I'm sure we can sort something out. So as a hobby grows, which is great news, we're hoping that there'll be maybe more accessible titles, more mainstream titles help as well. What are your thoughts about the growth of it? Are we growing in the right direction as well? I think because that's the next thing. We don't want more of the same necessarily. We want some more variety as well.
I mean, I think it's heartening to see Ravensburger in there because they've been doing great work in their sort of film tie-in games like Back to the Future, Dice Through Time, Jaws, games that have got like a recognizable pop culture or
IP brand.
Brand outside of board games that can bring people into board gaming, and those games are not just cheap movie tie-ins. They're great.
Yes,
like they're really good. Prospero Hall, who are like working for Ravensburger making those games, are doing some fantastic work, and they've just announced a Goonies one as well, I believe.
I have, yeah.
So yeah. So there's more of that coming, and I think things like the Disney Villainous series has done very, very well.
Disney Villainous is doing gangbusters.
Yeah, that's doing great. So like those sort of IP, like more IP tie-ins that are not just like IP cash-ins. Great stuff.
Absolutely. We like to see the market grow and the hobby grow, and hopefully it means we have also a wider variety of people buying games and playing games as well. Not just more games being bought and sold, but more people coming in at the same time.
Yeah, and talking about people coming into the hobby, Dungeons and Dragons has just released some statistics about its player base, Jamie.
I mean, why would you think that world's most popular role-playing game is having a good year if board games and puzzles had a good year. Oh wait, because it's Dungeons and Dragons, and it did. Dungeons and Dragons has pretty much had its best year ever over the course of 2020. Wizards of the Coast recently ran a survey of its player base, as it's done in the past. They claimed that over 50 million people have played Dungeons and Dragons to date, and that 2020 was the 7th year of consecutive growth for the game. That's amazing.
It's pretty good.
It is.
Yeah. The community's player base is younger and more diverse than well, I know Iain, who wrote this, was expecting. With only 13% of the player base who answered the survey, at the very least, being 40 plus. Also, 40% of the player base that answered the surveys identified as female, which is really a very encouraging statistic after all these stereotypes of gamers as being just guys.
I mean, it's one of the reasons I like going to Expo is that it's got it attracts a very diverse crowd.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Definitely,
that really pleases me when I see like a really diverse crowd playing the games that I love. That's great.
You know, and we've covered the success of Magic the Gathering over the previous year, and with these stats, it looks like Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro by association. I say association because they own Wizards of the Coast. They are doing so well, and I don't want to give plaudits to a massive bloated capitalist machine, but they're doing
Good
well.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not Wizards of the Coast... No, I was going to say whether or not Wizards of the Coast can keep this going. It's been 7 years in a row that's been going. It has not been smooth sailing. If you've listened to the podcast at all over this year, you've noticed that we've almost had a Wizards of the Coast segment.
Yeah.
At least once a month, maybe.
Yep. That's fair.
So, we hope things are improving.
Yeah. I mean, the game is certainly attracting a more diverse player base, which is great. And hopefully that'll push Wizards to be more diverse themselves and put out better products.
Definitely. It's good to see those numbers. And see what happens. See the trend continue, hopefully. But the question is, are we going to have in-person events? Because isn't that what this game is all about?
I mean, Wizards, certainly for Magic, pivoted very hard towards their online platform Arena during lockdown and encouraged stores to basically push their players onto that platform as well. And they are starting to approve events for in-person play in the States and China as well, I think. So they're trying to. Whether it will be successful or not, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of players might not come back to the stores.
Depends. I think it depends on country-by-country basis. But got to get that China money. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens, and obviously we'll bring you updates on that as it happens. We'd just like to thank all our patrons for continuing to support the cast, especially our executive producer Shaun Newan from the Game-A-Lot team. We'll put links to all of Shaun's stuff in the show notes. You can support us through the Patreon, of course. For only $1 a month, you'll get an extended version of the cast. And by the looks of the current running time, this one's going to be pretty extended. You can find a variety of ways to support us on the site as well. And we'll put links to that in the show notes as well. And especially, I'd like to mention our affiliate, Metallic Dice Games, who make very, very nice dice and dice-related products. You can get a discount with them using the promo code ROLLWITHBRAINS, all capital letters, all one word, for a 10% discount, and they give us a wee cut as well, so do check them out. It has been a very, very busy week in the cast. The cast has been pretty dense, and there's been a couple of news items that we haven't added in due to time constraints, but we'd like to point out a couple of articles to you to go and have a look at. Tanya Pobuda shared some of the results of her PhD, which include a deep dive look into representation in board games, habits, and a whole host of eye-opening stats on the hobby in general. We really recommend going and checking that out. And Polygon has also reported on how Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, the most recent Dungeons & Dragons book, has updated one of the most problematic characters in that setting. Again, coming back to what we were talking about in the more diverse player base in Dungeons & Dragons, pushing Wizards to have a more diverse product. So that makes for a very interesting read as well. And one more thing to check out, if you come along to our Discord on the 8th of June at 8 p.m. BST, we'll be conducting an onstage interview with James Hewitt. He's a former Games Workshop designer, has also worked with Mantic Games in the UK, and currently runs Needy Cat Games with his partner Sophie. I'll be conducting the interview
in our Discord, and we'll be having a live question and answer session afterwards, so do come along and ask James some questions. And talking about D&D once more, Jamie.
Well, it's time to leave, but of course, I've got a special one for you. We've talked about Dungeons and Dragons a lot on this podcast, and how it's done very well. And you would have thought, what about Dungeons and Dragons board games? Well, let me tell you, there have been Dungeons and Dragons board games. There's been Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, an adaptation of Betrayal at House on the Hill. There has been Cluedo Dungeons and Dragons, if you want to play Cluedo, but with Dungeons and Dragons weapons. There's Lords of Waterdeep, the vaunted game that, for some reason, is incredibly polarizing on some parts of board game internet. But now, the merger you all hoped for, wished for, prayed for, you sent letters in by the literally nuns. Dungeons and Dragons Monopoly has been announced, or was announced a wee while ago, but is now available to buy.
Yay.
Yeah, thank you. Look at that. Yes, fantastic.
I was the one with the letter who sent the letter in.
Thank you. Yeah, I wondered who that was. So, players are sent by Volothamp Gedarm, better known to Dungeons and Dragons players as the author of Volo's Guide to Monsters, and a character in the Forgotten Realms setting, into dungeons to capture various iconic Dungeons and Dragons monsters for research. So what that means is you can play as one of 6 D&D classes: the Human Fighter, the Human Wizard, a Halfling Rogue, a Dwarven Cleric, a Tiefling Bard, or an Elven Ranger, to collect D&D monsters which have replaced properties, such as the Gelatinous Cube, or the Beholder, or the Bugbear.
Oh, you mean I don't get to make a hotel out of a gelatinous cube?
No, but what you will get to do is, instead of houses and hotels, it's expeditions and bases. So you can put a base on your gelatinous cube, like put a little howdah on the top, and hopefully it doesn't sink in. Instead of the chance and community chest decks, you will draw from the treasure or encounter decks. Ooh. And in place of the railways, there are iconic Dungeons and Dragons. I've said iconic a lot. But I guess this game is
iconic.
It is
the game is approaching
50
50 years old this year, so I think it's probably reached some of its iconic status. There are iconic Dungeons and Dragons locations such as Castle Ravenloft and the infamous Tomb of Horrors.
Yay.
It's being published by the Op, or USAopoly, which most Monopoly versions that we talk about are coming from this company. They do it, and you know what? People buy it. Yeah, if you build it, they will come. Yeah. So indeed. Why not? That's all I got to say.
Copy.
Yeah, I'll send you one.
Well, Oliver, thank you so much for joining us on the cast. I'm sorry that this man, Jamie, butted into our special podcast alone time. But if people want to hear your dulcet tones on other casts, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on my website, tabletopgamesblog.com. Recently also launched an internet radio station where Brainwaves is obviously part of that as well, and various others. And you can find out more on tabletopgamesblog.com/radio. My Twitter handle is horrible. It's tabletopgamesblog, because the OG doesn't fit into the Twitter name. But just go to the website, tabletopgamesblog.com, and you'll find it on there. And thank you very much for inviting me. And it was good to see Jamie. And Iain, next time, maybe we can just change the time a little, and Jamie won't know. It'll be fine.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We'll just do it that way.
Sorry, what was that, guys?
Nothing.
I can just pretend to do a cast with him at some point, just to keep him happy.
Just record something with him, and it'll be fine. Yeah.
We're going to record a podcast again. I thought we were recording one right now.
Yeah, this is definitely going out.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
100%. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes,
right.
Thank you very much for listening to this podcast that is definitely going out. If you like what you've listened to, then the best way to help us out is to share this podcast that's definitely going out and drop us a review and rating on iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Our website is thegiantbrain.co.uk. You can email us about anything on the show at giantbrainuk@gmail.com, and do come and join us on our Discord, where we've got a nice little community going, and we have a games night that happens basically the day after every cast goes out. There's a little games night from 8 p.m. BST on our Discord. Do come and join us. We'd love to see you there. For now, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.